Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Cynthia Riddle, co-chair of the Writers Education Committee, along with Brian Gary and Vice Chair Ken Pisani. Just so you can know a little bit about our committee, we develop programs that provide WGA members with practical inside knowledge about how the industry works, how it's changing, emphasizing tips and tools to help writers succeed. And tonight we have a fantastic program that is really going to address all of that. Production 101, writers working on set television. And we are lucky enough to have Robert Hewitt Wolf, who has contributed to over 400 episodes of television during his career, including 6 seasons as a writer and executive producer on Elementary. Currently, he's a writer and executive producer on NBC's The Irrational that is going to be debuting their 2nd season this fall. So welcome, Robert. I will turn it over to you and let you introduce your panelists.
So we wanted this panel to be able to show a bunch of different perspectives about working on set. So in addition to me, we have my fellow writers and wonderful people, Lila and Nora Zuckerman, and they most recently were the showrunners on Poker Face, for which they won the WGA award. Before that, they've worked on a zillion things. I'll just say like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Suits, those are the biggies. Fringe. Let me know if I missed anything. They're terrific writers, and they've done a lot of work on set. They were on set every day for Poker Face, so they have lots of good practical advice for that. And then I wanted to bring in an actor and director. And I managed to get Sarah Wayne Callies, who is both. You might recognize Sarah from The Walking Dead, Prison Break, The Company You Keep. She's a very accomplished actor who's been on a lot of great shows. And recently she's transitioned into directing, and she's directed shows like The Good Doctor and Fire Country. And most recently, she directed an episode of The Irrational, which is how I roped her into this. And then the most important person on the panel is Taliesin Sanford, Tally. And she is our script supervisor on The Irrational. And before that, she worked on Supergirl and Nancy Drew and Lost in Space. And she's the best script supervisor in the entire world. And you can't have her because she's ours. And then our last panelist is, I wanted to bring in another directing producer. And I didn't go very far in my search because I got Jesse Warren, who's the directing producer on The Irrational. And before that, he was the directing producer on Supergirl, and he started directing on Spartacus, and he's done True Blood and all kinds of great stuff too. So hopefully we'll have a really good perspective. One of the things I wanted to say is that we called this television. It's really single camera television, basically anything that's shot like a drama. And that includes like single camera half hours like The Bear. The things we're talking about should be applicable for all of that. There's a very specific and very different way that like multi-camera sitcoms are shot, or like, you know, a variety show or a sketch show like Saturday Night Live. That's a whole nother animal. And hopefully someone who actually knows how those things are done will someday do a panel on those, because I have no clue. So that's all of us. And the first thing I wanted to we wanted to talk about was why writers have value on set, because a lot of shows these days don't actually send writers. And I think that's unfortunate. So Nora and Lila, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Robert. I always have said that writers save money for production. I think every day you're saving money because hopefully you're also saving time. I joke with Lila that when you're on set, it's like you're in that Justin Timberlake movie where he has a watch of time, and it's like everything counts down except for that's money. And so if you can make things go faster, if you can walk with the actor to makeup while they have a question, if you can move things along faster, if you combine scenes, you are immediately saving the production money. And so it is your job to make things go faster, not slower.
Yeah, and I do believe like it's like an obvious financial advantage for these shows to be sending their writers to set. I'm really shocked that there are shows that don't practice that, and I think they're learning the hard way when you have to do reshoots, when you have to extend, when you have to rewrite, when you have to do endless ADR, or there's an actor that's not working out and you end up having to recast later down the road. It's so much more valuable to just have a producing writer on set to try to nip those problems in the bud immediately. But outside of the financial considerations, I think the real value of having a writer on set is that you have somebody that is the eyes and the ears of the showrunner present as that show is being shot. And as a writer on set, it's your duty to be the eyes and ears of the showrunner. You are intimately involved with the material. You know it better than anybody else because you wrote it or were in the room when it was being broken. You know your showrunner, you know her vision, and you know how she wants you to execute the story. And so it is your job to be the advocate for the showrunner's vision while you are on set. And I think the most important thing you can do is like see problems before they happen, you know, anticipate, are we going towards a brick wall right now because of X and Y? What are the issues that are already emerging in this scene? What are the logistical problems with this scene and the difficulties about it being shot that I can address now so that vision of the showrunner remains intact? If there's anything I want you guys to take away from this talk tonight, it's like very simply, like if you ever get sent to set, you have one job, and that job is to be the guardrails on logic and taste of whatever is happening on your show, right? And not just your logic and taste, but your showrunner's logic and taste. You're going to know what she's not going to care about, and you're going to know what is very, very important to her. So I would just always keep that in mind.
And with that said, when you're on set, one other piece thing I really feel is important to say is if you're on set, be on set. You show up at call, you leave at wrap. You don't leave early. You are there whenever the cameras are rolling. You are there for all rehearsals. You are there for all blocking. When they're lighting, you can go to the bathroom and go get a snack, but don't be in your phone. Eyes on the screens. You'll be sitting in front of a bunch of screens that'll show the cameras, and you need to be there and present the whole time. Don't go to the set if you're going to spend your time in your phone, because then you're not doing your job. You're not the eyes and ears of the showrunner if you're not watching that screen.
Yeah, I encourage everybody
and
to
voice
be
of the showrunner too.
Yeah,
Sorry.
like active producers on set. I've heard stories about writers that go to set and they like go take a nap in the middle of the day in your trailer. Like, just don't be that kind of producer. If you're feeling bored, go walk around and meet the crew and see what they need. See if there's a problem brewing that you can go solve. I think I encourage everybody to be as proactive as possible because that's how you're going to show your value.
So we're going to go through the sort of steps of production, which start with prep. Now, some shows send writers for prep, some don't. Sometimes prep can be done by Zoom these days, but we'll go from there. Sarah, you had the best thing to say about prep that I've heard, which is.
Well, on the director's side, I think, you know, Lila, you've got the one takeaway. My one takeaway would be fix it in prep. Please fix it in prep, because as we all know, by the time we're sitting on set, changes are, as Nora pointed out, real expensive, and they take time and they're stressful for departments. So if you're in a location van and you just left a location on a tech scout and you're sitting next to your director and you can't quite understand how the logic of getting from this place to this place is going to go, ask them. You know, like, we as the DGA, we're here to support you, to support the showrunner's vision, right? Like, that's the phone tree. And so ask the questions. And if it's a big sequence, you know, a lot of times there will be action sequences, stunt sequences, vis effects sequences that are complex. If you're having trouble figuring out how your words become what the director is shooting, for big scenes like that, you can ask for storyboards. and sit down with the director and the storyboard artist and make sure that beat by beat, you kind of get where things are going. Because the thing that's no fun is to be there on the day and go, oh, I thought we were going to be in the other direction. And now everyone's going, oh no. And it's expensive.
Yeah, the prep is cheap. Fixing things in prep is cheap. Fixing things on set is expensive. Fixing things after set is even more expensive. And since your job is in other words, if you have to go back and reshoot something, if you have to go visual effects something to fix something, I mean, the cheapest and best and most efficient way to fix anything is in prep. So we want to talk really quickly about the sort of the key people to know in prep. And for that, Jesse.
Hey, everyone. I know a lot of these people will not be new to you, so I'll keep it brief. But line producer and UPM, the money people, they're known as sometimes, but they're really key collaborators. They're problem solvers. And my takeaway for them is learn to negotiate. You know, oftentimes you're going to be in a situation where, I don't know, your script requires 4 days location. There's 3 days worth of locations in the budget. Negotiate. Maybe you can reimagine your VFX sequence that you've written in. Maybe you can cast out of Canada for this part instead of LA. Whatever the negotiation process is, you can go to these people and you can try and make that budget reflect where you think the most important aspects of the script need attention. That is the key thing. And they will be negotiating back at you, believe me. So you'll get something like, hey, the script said you want an ocean. Can I give you a river? You'll say, yeah, okay, yeah, let's do a river. They'll go, good. What about a stream? You'll be negotiating.
P.S. There are salmon in the stream. We can't actually step in the stream. Just FYI.
You're right. So negotiate. Learn to negotiate. And obviously, this will be in tandem with the other departments and with your episodic director and all of that. But line producer and UPM can really be your friend when it comes to making that budget reflect what it is you want to get on screen. Director producers, they can be really helpful as long as they don't backseat drive too much. They serve a lot of purposes. A lot of times when I connect with a writer first is in pre-prep. So what'll happen is I'll get a draft before the production draft, me and the line producer, and we'll start reading it, looking at particular locations or sequences, things that might be a little outside the box for a normal episode, just things to troubleshoot. And we'll start working on those in tandem with the writer and the showrunner. Robert, your episode we just did was a classic case in point. So Robert wrote a great episode that had key sequences in a forest. And so what I started doing is I started texting with Robert quite early, sending him photos of different forests we were looking at. He was sending back references to me. And we ended up closing the field from 8 forests down to 3 by the time the episodic director arrived, and they chose 2 out of those 3. So, you know, it's a great way of being able to get things rolling prior to the episodic director stepping into place.
We also lost one of the forests we liked in prep. So like things like that can happen all the time. So you have to adjust to that. One thing I wanted to say about working with the UPM and the directing producer is like sometimes you get an idea for an episode and you want to check with them right away if it's even remotely possible. So for example, I did an episode this year that was about a hockey game and I figured it would be fine, but I called ahead of time and I was like, I think we want to do hockey for this episode. What do you guys think? And one of the things they were like saying is the rink we want to use is basically going to melt their ice on this date. So you need to only write 2 days on this location because after that, there will be no ice. So it's stuff like that. That's a really important part of working with the UPM and line producer. And then, of course, there's the episodic director. I think, Jesse, that's you too still.
Episodic director, you know, obviously, you never know who you're going to get. I find generally all the directors are fantastic, but you never know who you're going to get. You never know their personality type, whether they'll be communicative, whether they'll kind of keep everything inside the box, inside their head, or whether they'll be really an open book. My key advice with writers connecting with their episodic director is try and do, I guess, what you call a pre-tone, in the sense that if you can get a chance to sit down with the director and turn the page with them, get a general idea of their visual take, get a general idea, and they're listening to you, getting a general idea of character and the tone of the script in advance. It's going to really help you. Obviously, you'll have a tone meeting with the showrunner as well, but if you've made that personal connection because you're the one that's there, really the focal point on set often comes down to performance, I find. And where maybe a director thinks, hey, we've got it, we can keep going. You're thinking, hey, look, I think there's something that's missing here. And it's nice if you guys have already managed to page turn and have an agreement of sorts about what that scene was meant to be. And it kind of harkens back to what Sarah said in terms of fixing it in prep. It's getting a little bit ahead of it. And like I said, you can find out really quick if your director is someone that is engaged with the script, gets it, and actually values performance, because we've all heard about directors that are more visually inclined and kind of not really paying attention or as focused on performance, or ones like Sarah, for example, who are both. So just get to know them in advance, and it can help out with some of those situations on set around performance.
The writer director, go ahead, Sarah, please.
Can I just add one thing to that? Like, as
Yeah,
the
please.
product director who's often jumping in on shows where there's a set tone, even if you don't have, when you're doing that page turn, if you can say, these are the 5 scenes that we want to hang the episode on. Like, these are the ones where we're going to take the time, carve the time out of someplace else in the day. But that's super helpful for us to know, because it'll also give us a sense of like, oh, now I understand the script better. Because these are the story points that matter the most to you. And the sooner we know that in prep, the sooner we can start looking for locations where it's like, let's really show this off. This maybe is a little bit more about a place where we can get time.
And then I just want to just quick march through a few other people you should know. The AD and the second AD, they're the ones basically who are doing the schedule. They're basically running the set. Once you get on set, they're the ones who are going to come to you and say, hey, can we lose a page from this day? That kind of thing. I always say, like, part of the easiest way to kind of manage things on set is you just go where the AD tells you to do and do what he tells you to do, and you'll be good. The DP, obviously, there's some stuff with the DP and prep. Mostly you'll be working with them on set. Mostly the director will be working with them, and you'll be talking to the director, and that goes through the director. Production designer in prep, the production designer and his or her team are the ones bringing you all the different aspects of like props and costumes. The production designer is sort of in charge of it all, and then under them are like, the graphics people, the set dressing, the locations, all that stuff is under the production designer. And then the main department heads: hair, makeup, costumes, props, set dressing, locations. Am I missing anybody? No. Okay. So though you should get to know all of those people in prep. Some of them will be on set, some of them won't, but those are the people who will, like, you will be approving costumes if that's something you're empowered to do, that kind of thing. So you want to have a relationship with all those people as well. And then I wanted to kind of walk through the prep events very quickly. We have a few minutes to do that. The first thing that happens when you, and please everybody jump in, but the first thing that's going to happen when you get up there, or very early on, is the prep meeting. And that's the first time the entire crew, department heads, goes through the script with the writer, the director, and the showrunner usually will be there or call in. And it's basically like, what are the things we have to worry about this episode? Like, okay, we need a gun for this scene. What kind of gun? What does that gun need to function? The answer should be no. Stuff like that. This scene, we need like 15 zombies. Can we have 14 zombies? Maybe 10 zombies? What's the number of zombies we need in this scene to make the scene work? A lot of that stuff can be discussed in the prep meeting. Department heads will ask questions probably during the prep meeting. Anything else anybody wants to say about prep meeting?
I think this is your chance to really get to know people in certain departments. If it's your first time on set, that's you introducing yourself to everybody. So don't be afraid to reach out with email questions afterwards. I mean, the meetings like this, the bigger they are, and the first concept meeting is always really big. You don't want to bog people down with questions and sidebars. Just like, don't be afraid to reach out and try to anticipate problems as they pop up.
Prep meeting is also sometimes called the concept meeting. Sometimes it's called the pre-production meeting. And it can be an hour or two. I've been on shows where it's been like 4 hours, like on very technical shows, like Star Trek shows, those meetings went on all day, basically.
Yeah, I think it's also a meeting where you start to see if there are going to be big problems emerging. You can usually kind of get a sense of it during the concept. meeting. And if it's like, yeah, everybody's really freaking out about doing this underwater stunt or whatever it is, that's your chance to say like, hey, let's have a meeting about that specifically. Or, hey, let's sidebar, this thing that's going to be about this like particular location or this particular piece of costuming or this makeup job because somebody is, going to get really beat up. Like, let's schedule some time. And that way you are giving your department heads like enough leeway to be able to interact with you, because it is a meeting that moves fast. And so you don't want anybody to feel like kind of swept away and left behind with like their serious concerns.
And then next big thing that happens is the location scouts and walking the sets. And that's really your first time to understand as a writer how that is going to be on its feet. And really that is about you and you sort of understanding what the director is thinking. Because really picking locations, walking the sets, understanding how things are going to get on their feet, that is really the director's job. And it's your job to help them make that work. And if they have issues that need to be addressed in script to make things easier, this is a really good time to start talking about all that when you're finally like starting to pick the locations. Sarah, you want to talk a little bit about what you're looking for in locations and how that all works for you?
I mean, I'm looking for two things. Creatively, what gives us the best chance to tell the story, and what gives us the most time to focus on the acting and the words. So I'm looking to the writers again for the sense of like, what are the scenes where we're going to shoot the living daylights out of this? We may have a bunch of options so that when we get into post, we can play scenes a couple of different ways, versus what are the scenes that you're like, the job of this scene is to communicate this piece of information and move us from point A to point B. That's usually the conversations that we're having when we're walking around to figure out, maybe we need a couple of really expensive locations that are going to be huge set pieces that hang the rest of the episode. And then maybe we pair those with, maybe in order, like Jesse said, in that negotiation with our UPM, maybe there's a like, okay, tell you what, if we make this scene an indoor scene and we take it from 6 people to 5 people, maybe that buys us what we need to have this more complicated scene outdoors with the rain towers and the kind of thing there.
Yeah, and I would say also don't be afraid to be, if you're at a location early enough. There was a situation on Prodigal Son where we were at a theater and we needed something to double as a dressing room, and this was, nobody had walked into like an upstairs women's bathroom that we had been in. It was very ornate and deco and beautiful. And I was the only one who walked in there and said, can we just shoot this here? Because it was this location that we hadn't quite found a spot for. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, that opens up our day because we can now fill the dressing room scene with this bathroom here. So keep your eyes open, see if there's anything that you can do to make everybody else's life easier, because you're thinking of it from a creative standpoint and what's fungible and what's not. Everybody else is sort of taking direction from the page. So if there's something that you feel like, oh, actually this can work for that, speak up. You may end up saving the production time or money, or finding a really cool creative solution to something that nobody else is thinking of.
And you know what, Nora, to like back up a step from that, just for folks who are kind of newer to this, every time you move the company,
yes, yeah,
lose kind of a scene. You know what I mean? Like if they have to do more than like push the carts down the block, and even that is going to eat up an hour. But if you've got to load people into trucks and there's any kind of weather or any kind of distance, that scene they're asking you to cut, you probably have time to shoot if you can find a way to shoot that scene where we're already going to be. And that's it's kind of a 101, but man, it'll save you time.
Mm-hmm.
Also, as a general rule, close to the stages is better than far away from the stages. Interiors are better than exteriors. Day is usually better than night, but if you're in Canada in December, there isn't any day.
Okay.
And so when you're looking at sets, these are also things to think about. Like, is this set going to be horrifically hard to shoot on? I might love it, the director might love it, but if this other set is like a half an hour from the stages instead of an hour and a half from the stages, if it's, you know, going to take the crew, like crew parking will be right next to it instead of like 15 minutes away, like stuff like that is really important. And like you can get many better scenes and much better performances and have the director have more time for your action sequences if you're not eating up time in physical movement. And so, you know, or fighting weather, you know,
It's also pretty nice if a location is near your number one's house.
That's good too, by the way. Really good.
Not a terrible thing.
Jesse, the script we're going to send you up is you're going to get a place in Deep Cove, and that's the only.
Oh, really? Very nice.
Yeah, yeah. Everyone not from Vancouver has no idea what we're talking about. Scheduling meeting, that is usually between the ADs and the producing director and the director, but sometimes they'll bring you into it if they especially want to figure out ways to lose scenes. That's the meeting where they just beat the heck out of the director and make them like cut all their shooting time down. You know, you can't have 3 hours here. You can have 2 hours in this scene, you know, that kind of thing. There's budget meetings. Those go around all around you all the time. Sometimes they'll come to you and just basically say, like, we can't afford this, we can't afford that. What can we do? The big one is the next big one, though, is the tone meeting. And that is the meeting in which the head writer, showrunner will talk the director and sometimes the editor and sometimes even the DP through the script and tell them what she or he intends for scenes tonally, but also like, this is an important scene, this isn't an important scene. Like, it's the showrunner's chance to really convey what they need from the episode. And that's a very important meeting. And you know, generally the showrunner is going to take lead, but sometimes depending on the show, you might be taking lead on that. It just depends on the show. Tone meeting, guys, anything to add to that?
Yeah, they can be long and arduous, but incredibly important. So you will be referring to your notes from the tone meeting, especially if you're, you know, if you're on set. You will be looking back at, okay, what was the one thing that my showrunner said absolutely needs to be in this scene? And sometimes too, depending on you know, how long the show has been around, you know, showrunners will give new directors advice on, you know, this is what this actor will get hung up on. Maybe this is, you know, something that is going to be a difficult lift or a difficult scene. All of those things, you know, you're able to take into account in a tone meeting. And if you're a writer on set, I will say also, this is your chance to ask questions of your showrunner, who's often, you know, taken in so many different directions. This is the time that you all have to get on the same page. So if there's any outstanding questions you have, maybe there's a scene that's been rewritten and you're not sure what their total vision is of it, this is the chance. And then you can be on the record with the director, with the showrunner. And when you get on set, it's like you already have the shorthand. That's the hope.
And just like as a practical note, if you're a writer on set representing your showrunner, take copious notes during this meeting and put them in the script that you are going to be referencing on set, because you could be shooting a scene 8 days down the road and everybody's sleep deprived and it's the middle of the night and you're exhausted, and you'll look down at your script that you had in the tone meeting and there'll be a little asterisk with a little circle and you're like, oh yes, okay, let's refocus, that's the thing. So you should be taking notes through all of these meetings. I used to use different colored pens for different meetings, but now I'm using Scriptation, which is a program you can use however you like to do it, whether it's lo-fi or high tech. Take your notes and bring them with you to set every day, and refer to them, use them. It will recenter you and it'll make everything just like so much more clear about what you need to accomplish scene to scene.
And then there's the tech survey. Now, if you have not been on set, especially for the scouts, for example, or like there are shows where they send you up for the tech survey, the tone meeting, the tech survey, and the production meetings. The tech survey is when you basically drive around as a group to every location that's been chosen, and all the department heads get to like figure out their stuff, like where's the trucks going to park, where are we putting the wires, all that stuff. But the The big thing for the writer on the tech survey is this is your chance to talk to the director one more time about like how this is going to be shot and make sure that any changes, understand if changes need to be made, and also make sure you understand their vision of how they're going to shoot the episode. And maybe Jesse, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Just
or
real quick,
go,
my hot take
Go.
about how a writer should behave on a tech scout. Let everybody do their job. Let everybody huddle with their department heads. Don't insert yourself, but walk around and quietly spy on everybody. Just casually overhear what all of these little scrums are talking about, because chances are you're going to discover that like, oh, this stairway beam here is a problem, or this window here is this, or like whatever it is, just very gently listen in. And when the time seems right, if you can swoop in with a solution, great.
Can you add to that, Jesse?
I think that's spot on, because the truth is, by the time you get to the tech survey, because the writer's been through prep with the director, with everyone else, there's nothing on the tech survey that should really be a surprise to you. You've already been to the location, you've already been through all the meetings, you've already had your hopefully one-on-ones with the director, your page turns. It shouldn't really be too much of a surprise to you. So you've got an opportunity, just like you said, Lila, to kind of get in there and just see read the temperature on a lot of crew that you're meeting for the first time as well.
And often actually directors don't have a ton to do on the tech survey either, because we've been there a bunch. So this is the time for the grips and the electrics and the locations guys. So it can be a great time to connect with the writer. You know, like if you've got questions, it's actually, you're probably not going to be bugging the director to be like, hey, can we just real quick, like, we're not going to point that way, right? Because I hate that. But if we point this way, we're happy. And, you know, you can have that conversation.
Also, you're going to be on a bus with like 50 people, and you should be sitting near the director, you know, because that's a good time to talk about stuff too when you're on the bus from one point. Like, well, hey, when we were just back there, I noticed this thing, and what about this? Or, hey, I noticed you were talking about doing it this way. I can, do you want me to adjust that in the script? I can put that in the script for you, because a lot of times it does help to have any of those kind of changes that the director needs in the script. It helps the actors because then they don't get tripped up. They're like, what I thought said I was going to run through a door here, and now I'm crawling in through a window. But like in the script, it says I run through the door, you know. So make sure in the script now you're changing it to crawling in through a window, or vice versa, obviously.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think also check with the ADs too, if there's anything that they particularly need. You know, you need to say evening or golden hour, whatever, like whatever makes their lives easier, make those changes. Even if it, you know, gives you a little asterisk on your script, it's ultimately you're doing them a favor and you're helping them out in their department.
And then the last step of prep, and we'll finally get to tally, is the production meeting, which is basically just kind of like the concept meeting again, with hopefully mostly answers and not questions. Hopefully this is like everybody going through everything and going like, we know exactly what we're doing here, but not always. And sometimes there will still be questions, and it's sort of the last chance to answer those questions. Anything I missed about all that? Are we done with prep? On to the fun one.
Just in terms of making changes to your script, every show is going to be different about when they want you to turn your pages in and turn them around. Some people will want you to take everything that you learned during the prep meetings and have a new draft ready for the production meeting with all of the stars and all of the changes and all of the tweaks and everything like that. But that's really at the discretion of your showrunner. Just like be prepared during prep to be constantly taking notes and constantly updating your script to reflect the changes that happen in prep.
Yeah, and you'll probably issue changes through prep, most shows anyway, and then ideally most of the changes you will issue will be during prep, and you will not be issuing changes during production. Because like Sarah said, fix it in prep. So now we're shooting. And we get to meet some new people we haven't met before. Tally, take it away.
Yeah, so, you know, first and foremost is kind of the most obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway, and it's the cast. You know, these are the people who are going to be saying your words, and it's really important that they feel like, you know, you're a touchstone for them within that. And introducing yourself in the process early, the earlier the better, is really, I think, very beneficial, because then by the time you get into the place of blocking and rehearsing and shooting where questions are going to start coming up, maybe there's, whatever it may be, tweaks, logic questions, they already know who you are, they already know why you're there, and they know who to go to with those kinds of questions.
It's also really good, just to rewind to prep for a little bit, when you're walking the set, when you have a chance to go introduce yourself to the actor, to tell them you're doing the next episode, to let them know that they can get a hold of you if they have questions or comments or changes that they need. Often actors are not great about, because they're so busy that it's hard for them to focus on the next episode when they're in the one that they're in. But some actors will give you the changes that they're, or if they have issues, they'll tell you ahead of time, and that can be enormously helpful.
And if you're lucky, your production has a read through. There's sort of different schools of thought as to whether or not a cast read through works for production or doesn't. It sort of really is show dependent, but that's a great place to meet actors who you haven't met before, and just get their read on stuff. And if you can hear it, somebody's stumbling over something, somebody's having an issue with something, that's also, I think it's a luxury, but it seems to happen less and less. But if you do have a cast read through, it's very lucky.
I didn't even put it in our outline because it's been so long since I've been on a show with read-throughs. But yes, if you have a read-through, that's amazing, because you can definitely hear how people are going to do things. You can talk to them right there. They can come to you right away with issues if they have them, and that's really great. Other people you should know on set, Tally?
Me.
Yay!
Yeah, definitely, introduce yourself to the script supervisor, find who that person is on set. It's, Robert can attest to it. I'm sure, Lila and Nora can as well. It's constant communication with that department, with me on set. And it's so beneficial when that can happen in real time, when there are writers on set. During COVID, there were no writers coming up from LA to the shows, and it was me and the director and the writers all in a text thread. And it was just, if questions came up, if there was logics, if there was asks for alts, it was through texts, and that worked fine until it was 2 a.m. and there's nobody to text anymore. So when you have that, again, touchstone on set, it's really quite fantastic. And Robert and I will touch on that relationship with the script supervisor a little bit later. But I did recently learn that on the show that we're currently on, when writers are sent up, they're told, find Tally and stand wherever she's standing.
Advice.
Another department that kind of gets overlooked a little bit is the sound department. And it's, if you can find, the sound mixer and the boom op, introduce yourself to them, have a line of communication with them. You're going to be their best friend, because little line changes like within words aren't quite as important, but as soon as maybe line order gets starting to shift, they need to know that, because the mixer is going to be bringing up mics and dropping mics down, and they need to be able to anticipate which line is coming next. Same with the boom op of anticipating where they have to move the boom op, the boom mic to. Again, that communication, again, it kind of always comes down to communication and knowing who on set is the priority of being able to have those conversations with, to just, again, streamline everything. And something to also,
sorry, go ahead.
Nope.
I had some line changes on my episode, and I totally forgot to tell sound. And I know Tally secretly covered my ass on that. But it is good if you can do it yourself.
Yeah. Another thing to keep in mind as well, through all of the prep, all of these department heads that you're meeting, a lot of them don't translate to production. They're, in meetings and in prep for the next episode, once that episode goes to, to start shooting. And there are some crossovers of, like key hair and makeup are going to be on set often, your AD team, your gaffer, your key grip, but everybody else is going to be different people. You have your on-set props, you have your on-set costumes, you have, playback and graphics are going to be different people than you liaison with in the meetings building those graphics. There's going to be special effects, there's going to be visual effects, grips, lighting department. These are all people who are going to be new faces. And if this is overwhelming, the call sheet is your cheat sheet. It has everybody's names. It's a great reference to be able to refer to. And also just, again, like you have the plan of the day right there. So it's a great, great tool to be able to reference.
Another secret tip is to look at everybody's mic, which they, keep on there, and it usually has some sort of shorthand about like what are they key grip, are they best, like what is that person's job, and so look for that. Or
Yeah, look at their comms. There's usually a little hint there.
And I just wanted to briefly touch as well of like, and Robert, stop me if this is something that's going to get covered later, but where you end up being on set when it starts, because that's something that's very different from show to show. Each show kind of has a different vibe of how it's set up. There's always going to be a plethora of monitors, but where you might land is going to be different. On the show that I'm currently on, there's director's monitors that have chairs set up usually, and that's, the director, the writer, and myself there. Sometimes it's all just at Main Video Village with the DP and the other keys. Sometimes the director has little handheld monitors and they're by themselves on set and you're going to be somewhere else. And it's just and then that's going to change too, is once you're out in the woods and it's just a monitor on a stick. And if you're lucky, there's Apple boxes to sit on. So it's just being aware that you're always going to have a place, but what that place is may be different and maybe different from day to day.
100%. If at all possible, you should, whenever possible, if you can dictate where you're standing, it should be with the director and the script supervisor. Like that is the best possible place for you to be. It doesn't always, it depends on the culture. It depends on a lot of things, but
yeah, keep my step counts down.
Also, like those are the people you need to talk to if there's an issue, and they're the people that they're going to need you the most to talk to you if they have an issue. So now shooting starts. What do I do? Sarah, Jesse,
Go get him, Jesse.
Oh boy. Well, I think the main thing is step one, you're going to watch a block through of your scene for the first time. You're going to get it on its feet and see what it looks like. Depending on what your director's like, that process might be a little different for every episode, but a lot of directors like to start with a read through of the words. So you actually, barring a read through, a table read through, this might be the first time you've actually heard your actors say the words. So we're standing on set. We have the actors kind of circle the wagons and we read the scene, and it's a good opportunity to have a few questions if the actors that might kind of go, hey, and straight away go, that bumps me a little, or they might go, hey, do you mind if I change this or that? Or things being perfect, it just sails through and it's a nice read through and the director starts to block it. Hopefully, a lot of times in prep, you can have seen the director do kind of a ghost block walking the stages, and you've got an idea already of the shape of the scene that they're envisioning. That's really great so that you don't have any real surprises. But it may be the first time that you've actually seen the actors in position and looking at it sort of coming to life in front of your eyes. But that's sort of the very beginning Lego blocks of how you're going to get into your first day.
Jesse, can I throw one thing in? There are some shows, there are actors who are not interested in anyone's input in blocking. So yeah, a lot of times it'd be great if in prep you kind of go, okay, my thinking is she's going to walk in here and he's going to do this, blah, blah, blah. But there are also going to be actors who, if they smell that someone has pre-blocked a scene, will be allergic to those ideas, and that's just their process. And often they're fantastic actors who come out of theater and 4 weeks to play around with something before anybody puts marks on the floor. But if that's the case, then there's a whole bunch of flexibility kind of needed from every department, because you're walking in going, all right, let's read the words, let's see where this takes us, and we're going to feel it through from there.
That's a super good point. And oftentimes it's just setting the playing field, just kind of going like, this is sort of the zone we're playing in. Let's see how this develops within this zone, so people aren't wandering into different rooms or anything like that. But you set up a playing field that you've already kind of talked through with your DP, and you've got a zone to plan. And I'll tell you one really nice thing I do like to do. I don't know if you've ever done this, Sarah, but particularly if I've gone through a tone meeting with the showrunner and they've said something like, you know, I feel like a lot of the scenes have the potential to be really static. Could you please make sure, like, for example, this scene in the office, keep them on their feet? Or, you know, look, I know that this interrogation room might fall into, you know, people sitting for 4 pages, but is there a way that you can kind of get this moving? Sometimes what I'll do is I'll ask the writer straight away, I'll go, let's put that straight into the script.
Mhm.
Find so-and-so standing in his office. They turn, you know, and just because oftentimes, to your point, Sarah, and it's such a good one, I mean, the actors are living with the script aside from you and your ideas for a long time, and they're envisioning it and they're imagining it and they're trying to get into it. And so when they arrive, it's very natural that they've kind of developed thoughts and feelings and connections to the material outside of knowing anything about what you've got planned. So any way that you can kind of sort of collaborate with the writer to invest into the pages a shape that might lend itself to interpreting the way you want, it's not a bad trick.
And it's
I just aside on that, I worked with a wonderful actor, Rene Aubergenois, just one of the greats of all time. And one day I was on set and I got to look at his script, and he crossed out every single one of those things. He took a Sharpie and he took out every parenthetical, every action line. And then he wrote down on the script what he thought the scene was physically.
Yep.
And so every actor is different, and you have to be sensitive to that. Also, hey, you're in blocking, and the actor's saying it differently than you want, and maybe the blocking isn't quite what you were thinking it was going to be. And do you jump in there? No, don't do that. Talk to the director.
Yeah, I would say
Privately.
as a writer on set, watching blocking can be very difficult, but it is your job to let your director and the actors have the floor. You are hanging back, you are observing, and you are letting them figure it out. You're letting them go through the process and discover the material that you think you know so badly, that because you've been working on it for so long. Be patient, deep breaths. Do not insert yourself into the process unless your director asks you a question, or one of the actors directly approaches you with an issue, and then in that case bring your director in and solve it together. But it is not your job to insert yourself in that process, however difficult it might be, to kind of watch it play out.
And you know, that's something too that this is like speaking kind of with my actor hat, like we're not taught anything about who's in charge on a set. And I know that sounds weird, but for those of us who came from theater, usually our writers are dead, or they've only been in rehearsal for 10 days and then they go away and the director is the floor. And so I think for a lot of either new actors or theater actors, there's a transition that that they might not even know that they need to make, which is the director in theater is the be all end all and the final creative voice. Whereas in television, it's the showrunner. And, you know, if you're the writer on set, you're the voice of the showrunner. And so there may be actors coming to the director going, hey, can I change this line? Can I change this scene? And then they kind of, well, let's talk to the WGA. Like, come on, let's come over here. There may be actors that you're working with who don't know that you're the one to go to change lines. It's not personal. It's just no one tells us anything as actors. We don't know who we're working for ever.
So basically the most important thing I think is, we want to talk really quickly about the way the rhythm of the way a scene is shot, which is usually it's the master and then coverage, then reverse and more coverage. So Jesse, can you say why that's important for the writer to understand?
Well, look, it's a couple of things. One is a wide shot is oftentimes a nice way to get a rehearsal in a sense, because you know that the wide isn't this super important coverage of a nuanced performance beat, right? So you get a chance to also iron out your blocking. You know, you get the wide shot up, you've blocked the scene, you're looking at it, you can kind of adjust it a little, because that wide shot only needs to work for a couple of little moments here and there. So I really like that. It also lets your actors breathe and get into it too. You can, you know, if someone's having a little trouble with lines or something like that, it just lets it develop. And it allows you literally, depending on the wide shot, of course, a bird's eye view of the scene. You can watch it unfold through the camera. So it's kind of nice.
And it also means that when if you have changes, sometimes you don't need to address them in the wide. Sometimes you should definitely make sure to talk to your director and your script super about that, because your script super is going to know better than anyone else, even the director, definitely better than you, the best way to get the actor that note, depending on the actor, depending on the time of day, depending on a million other things. Some actors, you want to get the note to them right at the top, because once they do it a certain way, they're going to do it that way forever. That's just how they work. Some actors, you get it, get it for when they're like waist up in the camera. Tal, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's very, tailored to the actor, as was mentioned, because I've just expanding on that. I've had actors that I've had the conversation with of like, when do you want to know notes on words? And I've had actors who are like, after blocking. Come to me after blocking, tell me what I've done wrong, because I need to get it in my head right off the bat, and the wide is how I get it cemented. And if I'm getting notes in my coverage about the words that I've now spent an hour and a half saying, it's not going to be good. And then there's complete flip side of actors who are like, this is the wide, you're never going to use this, don't talk to me about words right now. And some actors who are very much, like right in their close-up, when you're going to use it, that's when they want it, because they need it immediately, and then it goes in and then it might go out again. And then tailored again to the day, their mood that day. Maybe it's been a really hard morning, like maybe it's pouring rain and they're soaked and it's gross and cold out. Maybe, there's so many different factors that can affect that. And it's very much just kind of a dance on the day of taking all of those things in and tailoring how you're giving notes and how you're approaching these things to the moment. And that's just something that you get adept at by practicing and reading people and getting to know the actors and knowing their specific quirks and their little, idiosyncrasies and stuff like that.
Sorry to keep jumping in.
No, that's why you're here.
Well, one thing to keep in mind that I think often gets overlooked is when an actor is asking to change a line in a scene, if it's, not but if it's a real line, the other person in the scene is affected by that line change too. And part of the challenge with major changes on the day is that the other actor in the scene may have worked really hard on their side of that scene, and a big pivot on the day of like, no, I don't want this to be a fight, I want this to feel congenial, can be really tricky for some people. Again, if you come from theater and you've rehearsed the living daylights out of this home, or if it's an older actor who maybe kind of has to like really get it in their bones before they get to set, and those pivots are tricky, I think it's just worth keeping in mind that line changes that change the kind of tenor of a scene affect everyone who's performing in that scene, not just the person saying the line.
And that said, sometimes at the end of the day, if number one on the call sheet wants to do it a specific way, it depends on the show, but most of the time that's the way it needs to be done. I mean, it's just the truth of the matter is they have to inhabit it, they have to sell it, and people are tuning in to see them, and so a lot of this is picking your battles, what you want versus what you can get, both in terms of like practicality with like in terms of like how different people work, but also in terms of time, because at the end of the day, you have to make your days. You got to get the stuff, but you got to get it in time. And so that's a big discussion and something that you should be thinking about. Like, can I live with this? Is this the fight I want to have? Or is this the intervention I want to make? Maybe let's make it less combative. Like if the words are being said slightly differently than the way you wrote them, but the spirit of the words are being conveyed and the necessary information is being conveyed, a lot of the time, like, step away, man. That's good. Like, they put it in their mouth. It has to make sense coming out of their mouths. And sometimes you can even hear it as people are rehearsing. Like, people are having a lot of trouble saying something. It's too many words. The words are not fitting in their mouth right. There's ways to help them out. Like that's helpful. But if you're like, it has to be the way I wrote it, well, I mean, there are shows that are like that. I've worked on them. It's the culture of the show. But if it's not the culture of the show, talk to the director, talk to your script supervisor, understand whether this is a necessary battle or not.
And to just expand on that as well, like you kind of only have so many chips in a day for notes. And that goes for directors, that goes for myself as a script supervisor. There's only so many times that you can go in and note an actor on words, on performance before they're like, this is getting too much. And to really be conscious of, as Robert said, pick your battles of which hills you want to put your chips on, or which, you're like, this I'll live with because I want to keep the chips for this scene because I know that there's going to be questions and I want to be able to have, we want to get it like this, or we want to be able to give the notes for that. This will give up so we can get that, and that balance and being able to negotiate that balance as well.
Your director will be able to help you with this too, because if there's a line or a thing or a movement or somebody's just doing something that looks like super goofy with like a pen or something, and you're like, what's going on? Like they'll be able to tell you like, oh, we're not going to be on her during that, or it's fine, I can cut around that. Like your director's going to be like your best friend in that, so you can kind of like relax and move on and not worry about the thing that's not even going to appear on screen.
There may, look, something can come up where your showrunner is going to want you to go to war if necessary for something. And 100% you want to make sure you always have, at least as Tally would put it, one chip left to play just in case that happens. Like you don't want to spend all your credit right at the top of the day, and it's a team sport at the end of the day. Television is a team sport. And you need to be aware of that. And you need to understand that everybody has their process. Everyone's trying to do their job to the best of their abilities. That actor is not saying it that way because he's trying to piss you off. That actor's saying it that way because that is the way it's coming out of his soul. That is what makes sense for him. That's how he understands it. And maybe you say, well, you got to say that there were 5 bullets. Like that's the one thing we have to get out of this, is that you have to say that there were 5 shots fired because it's a really important plot point later. Well, you better have that chip left, you shouldn't have wasted it. Go ahead.
Sometimes you're going to lose the battle, right?
That's true too.
A Suits story. We had really incredible wardrobe on Suits. Gorgeous. One day, one of our beautiful actors shows up to set dressed like a pirate. Like it was insane. It was the most insane outfit you'd ever seen. Like we did some outrageous things, but this was just like too far. And she had been sewn into it and we were running late and there was nothing to be done. I said, stop. I made sure she felt comfortable. I was like, has anybody seen this? Nobody's seen this. She's just full Jack Sparrow pirate outfit, looked ridiculous, but we had no choice. And we're like, okay, maybe we'll just try to get her in a close up where we're not seeing all the piracy happening here. And it wasn't like one of those scenes like you were talking about, Sarah, that was like the most important scene. Like if it had been one of those foundational scenes, we'd have to be like, sorry, guys, they can't, make out for the first time with her dressed as a pirate. But it wasn't. It was just a scene of somebody getting on an elevator. But Nora and I called our showrunner and we're like, hey, heads up. You're going to see something in the dailies that is alarming. And we tried to stop it and we just could not. Otherwise we were going to have to cut a scene and it would have been a thing. And so and he's like, I'm sure it's going to be fine. And then one day, because our offices were next to post, we hear like a screech when this outfit came on stage. But that being said, again, you could cut around it. It wasn't that important. We knew that it wasn't like a foundational moment, but just know that you're going to lose, I guess, is the moral of this story sometimes. And when you do, give your showrunner a heads up that night, put it in an email that day so they know that you didn't drop the ball. They knew that you fought the good fight. And then when they're looking at the dailies, they know that you don't think that it's normal to dress like a pirate in an office.
And maybe they'll go, it's not so bad. It's not as bad as you told me, so.
And to expand as well, just talking about you can cut around it. You have to remember as well, like all of these different pieces of coverage that we're shooting the scene from top to bottom are going to play in cuts. You know, for the most part, barring the occasional oneer, it's going to be edited. And so when you're in the coverage and you're like, did we get everything? Your script supervisor is going to be able to say, yes, we got this in take 1. We got this line perfect in take 3. You have everything you need in pieces, which is sometimes hard to remember when you're just seeing it like top to bottom every time. You're like, we never got one. And sometimes, most times, that's okay because it's going to be edited.
I think that's a really important thing to say. I mean, my thing is like, I'm looking at the script, I'm watching the monitors, I'm paying attention, I'm making notes the whole time the shooting is going on. But I'm not always sure that it's all there. Like, it's very difficult to keep track of everything. So one of the things that I'm always very cognizant of is like, I think we got it, but does Tally think we got it? Does Sarah think we got it? Because if all 3 of us think we got it, we've got it, you know? But if one of us is like unsure, okay, we probably got it. But if a couple people are like, I don't think we got that, then we need to, you know, we need to go get it, you know? Or if we can't go get it, we need to understand that that's going to have to be ADR later.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother situation.
And like Tally will hear too, like if you're like, oh my God, the line is perfect. It's the perfect reading. I love it. I love it. And they're like camera bump or soft focus or whatever it is. And so you're not hearing that because you don't have a comm, but check with her, check with the director, or the director says camera moved too early or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. There are things you can't control, but be aware of what's happening outside of just the words.
And often as well, depending on the scene and depending on the actors as well, if it's one line, we can often just, you know, do a pickup as well. And just if there's one line that's super important that we haven't gotten, that again, conversation with your director, with your script supervisor, and with your actors, if, you know, maybe we just need to pick that one piece up and then we have everything.
Yeah.
There was something Lil and Nora, you were talking about this is actually before shooting starts. This is kind of when you show up in the morning even, or as blocking is being done, or right before cameras are rolling. You want to talk about the one thing rule?
Yeah, this is Lila's wise advice, I think.
So there is going to be some time between when blocking happens and shooting starts where everybody is setting up. There's also going to be downtime that happens when a scene is turning around, which means you're getting all the angles from the other side, and then you're going to move on to the next set or the next scene. And you're going to be sitting there kind of like twiddling your thumbs, wondering what to do. My advice is this: go walk the set that you are about to shoot on and find something messed up and fix it. My number one thing is like, there's always a clock. Like, why is there a clock on set? It's never going to be correct. It's always going to change. It's going to be moving, or it's just going to be stagnant. Like, get rid of any clock. Get rid of anything on the wall that's like distractingly, like alarmingly bad. Get rid of the clue that is not supposed to be discovered until the next scene. Just walk around and take a look around. There was one show that Nora and I were on where it was supposed to be like, oh my God, we're trapped in this office and all these monsters are outside the door and we're pinned down and they're coming in and there's no way out. And we go and walk the set right before we're supposed to shoot it. And in this room on this set were 4 doors and 2 windows. And we were like, wait a minute, there are like actually 5 ways out, right? So we go and we alert the first AD, you know, it's a couple hours until shooting. People are, you know, now all of a sudden moving some bookshelves and doing some creative stuff and bringing in another wall. But we were able to do that before we started blocking on set and before the actors got there. It was like a last minute swing set kind of thing that got built. So just, you know, like it's like the whole fix it and prep thing, just anticipate the problems. Go walk around and see things. Don't mess with it. Don't move anything, but go around and walk around and take a look and fix whatever's wrong.
Well, and a lot of it I find too can often be set deck, because even when you're doing the tech scout,
yeah,
tech hasn't come in and set all the like itty bitty stuff. I mean, I walked into I was supposed to be shooting something that took place after an alien invasion. And it was this sort of like, there was bread lines, ration cards. And I walked into what was supposed to be my bedroom, and there was like makeup and jewelry and all of this amazing, like, and I was like, cool, 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 cool. This is really great. It's all gotta go.
Yeah.
Like, because
It's
none of-
gorgeous, but it makes no sense. Like there's sometimes that, you know?
yeah, like maybe the way to think about it is that as a writer, you guys are telling the story with words, but we're telling the story in 3D. And so to give yourself a chance to see what story are we telling with our set deck and our props, because sometimes you will have laid out this very detailed, specific story, but you know, the onset folks may not have had a chance to prep it at the same level. So they just heard bedroom and female and threw like pearls and lipstick in there, and you know, with the best of intentions, but yeah, we sometimes an early edit saves saves the story.
Just real quickly, getting the stuff you need at the speed which things are, like when to talk, when to go to the bathroom. Tally, you want to like talk a little bit about that, about the pace and the logistics?
Yeah, it's fast. We often are moving very fast, particularly in television. And then there's 1,001 things that can happen that are going to propel us even faster. Maybe we're fighting the light. Maybe, you know, something went wrong on set that delayed us. Maybe we had a company move that took longer than we were anticipating because we hit, I don't know, rush hour. Like there's so many things that can come up on the day that you can't always, you know, account for everything that might happen. And the speed, knowing ahead of time and forearming yourself of the speed that we're often moving at, I think is very important, because sometimes we need, you know, a question comes up about a line change while the actor is getting finals, and it's a split second of like an answer needs to happen now. And often, you know, if it's something very important that needs the due diligence of checking, 100% that needs to happen. But often it is very fast paced, and the answers that have to happen need to happen in a very short time. And it kind of loops back into that whole conversation we had about like when pick your battles of, at the end of the day, we need to get everything, but we also need to get it within the day. So sometimes it's 2 takes and then we have to move on. So making sure that we do have everything in those 2 takes and having those conversations, you know, again, communication of like talking with your director, talking with your script supervisor, talking with your ADs, knowing the schedule as well a little bit can be helpful. So, you know, like this day we're slammed. So anything that comes up needs to be answered quickly.
And like even down to like when you're going to go to the bathroom, like turning around, that's a good time to go to the bathroom, because there's going to be a lot of cameras being moved around. They've got to do a lot of stuff, but make sure someone knows where you are. Like people need to know where you are too. Like if something comes up, they need to know where you are. So tell people where you're going, tell the second AD, or tell your script super, or you know, somebody should know where you are, because you don't have a microphone. Like you only have a headphone that can hear the what's being picked up by the sound department. You can't talk and no one can talk to you. So they can't go like, Robert, where are you? If you haven't told someone where you are and they need you, not good. So make sure that you're constantly like, somebody knows where you are and where to get you at all times.
And when in doubt, if your script supervisor or your director is stepping off to use the bathroom or run to Crafty, that you know you have time, because those key individuals, ADs as well, like cast, those key individuals are now stepping away from set. Oh, okay, I have time as well.
Yeah, but don't wait around and then go. Like go when they go. Observe and report. Like you are the eyes and ears of the showrunner on set, and so a big part of your job is to make sure that, like other people were saying earlier, if something big is up, showrunner needs to know about it. You need to get that information to them right away. And they usually, hopefully your showrunner has told you how they prefer you to do that. Maybe they want you to text, maybe they want you to send them an email, maybe they want you to call. But like that is a big part of it, like making sure that if something comes up the showrunner absolutely needs to know about, or if like there's some bigger crisis that the showrunner needs to intervene on, that communication is being done. And then Nori, you want to talk a little bit about one other thing is you may be required to write a set report. And that would be like something that all those notes you're taking in the script, you may need to type that all up and give it to the showrunner. Different showrunners have different requirements for that. A lot of people, a simple email, your favorite takes. If there was an issue, describing what it was, make sure to say nice things if good things happen to, like if someone was heroic and did something really, really good. That's always good to make sure your showrunner hears that too. They shouldn't only get bad news. But Nora, you were talking about the perils of modern technology.
Yeah, these days now also, a lot of it post-COVID, there are remote ways that you can view set, right? We recently worked with something called Q-Take, and it's literally a live feed of the monitors. So sometimes you can be on set and your showrunner or your executive producer, whoever has access to that back in Los Angeles or in New York or wherever they are, can literally pull up a take on their phone. And so this is the kind of thing that I think you're going to experience more now than you would have a few years ago. It's kind of an addictive technology, I think, also for certain people, or if you're a micromanager, you're going to love this kind of technology, and that's probably many showrunners. So it can be great because you can go, I know this is the one scene you're worried about. You can text and say, go take a look. Or it's awful because it's like a backseat driving situation and you're getting a text in the middle of a scene going, are we moving on? Why aren't we going closer? And then you have to be the conduit to the director. So the best thing you can do is protect your director in that situation, make sure that they're aware of it, set up a system if they want to check in with you. But this is going to become a thing more and more, and productions are paying for it, especially now with productions being as global as they are. Someone can literally wake up at 2-3 in the morning and go, what scene are they shooting? I want to watch it. So be aware and just do the best you can. There's no rules really for it.
I don't think there's best practices even set up yet for that, for being a writer on set with a showrunner over your shoulder, or just an EP over your shoulder, create over your shoulder, whatever it is. I think we're going to learn that. I think we're going to learn it through trial and error, but just be aware that that's like a thing that's coming for us, and it's coming for our directors, and it's coming for our actors too, that all of a sudden somebody that's half a world away could be calling the shots.
And if you're the person that's half a world away watching the scene on a monitor or your laptop or a phone in a coffee shop, like, respect what's going on set and try your best to not backseat drive. I think it's going to be tempting, but you gotta do it. Let people do their jobs.
So you're sitting in Video Village and suddenly up comes someone wearing a really nice outfit, like expensive clothing, and they're very well put together, and they don't look at all frazzled, and they suddenly sit down and they get a chair, and you're like, who is this and what do I need to do now? Lily, you want to talk a little about the caring of and feeding of unexpected or even expected VIP visitors, because that person is probably a vice president of your network.
That's right. So much of your job sometimes of being either a showrunner or a writer on set is being like an ambassador for the production, especially if you're on a show that people are curious about, that is new or is successful, or shooting in an awesome location that somebody wants to, do a little boondoggle off to New York City or whatever it is. You will have executives visiting set. You will have people's managers visiting set. You will have people from the network. You'll have people from production companies. And in many cases, it might be the first time that you meet them or see them outside of Zoom. But it is your job to literally take them off the hands of the rest of your crew. You have more time. Everybody else is scrambling like crazy. Everybody else is doing like massive amounts of labor and solving a bazillion problems. Hopefully you've done a good job and solved all your problems in prep, but it is the care and feeding of your VIP guests is also part of your probably unexpected responsibilities. And half the time you don't even know that they're showing up until somebody sits down with you, like with a smoothie, and you're like, I didn't even know smoothies were available, but like they have managed to find like the smoothie.
Get them a chair.
Be charming.
Engage them.
Make a friend. network.
Explain to them what the comms are and tell them to turn their phone on
Tell them to
silent.
turn their phones off the
Yeah.
second that they sit down, and show them how to work the comms, and then walk them around, you know, show them the next sets and schmooze them. These are probably the people you're going to be like pitching a show to in like 3 to 5 years. So take advantage of the situation. And if you can't do it anymore, excuse yourself and look very busy that you're going to go solve a problem, and make sure that they are sitting in their proper place. Make sure they've got their chairs. Make sure that they've got their rental car and there's nowhere to go to dinner and all of the good stuff. And if they want to go get a drink after work, unless you have like a ton of work, just take them up on it. Like, absolutely take advantage of the situation. Because A, it's beneficial to you, but B, nobody else has time, like, at all. And chances are, most of the time, they're going to go outside and say, hey, where can I take a phone call? Where can I go do a thing? Because I have a meeting, you know, show them where your trailer is if they don't already have their own. Be gracious. You are a little bit like the social chair when that happens.
I want to talk about one of the things that's really, really important, which is safety and respect on set. Which is basically, you are the eyes and ears of the showrunner. This is your responsibility too. And that means that if you have written a stunt, or if you've written a love scene or something like that, that it is your job to make sure that this is going to be pulled off safely, and with with ease by everybody, and that no one's going to get hurt physically or emotionally. And that means working with the stunt coordinator and the intimacy coordinator, making sure your actors are comfortable. If you see something that is unsafe in any way, shape, or form, you see something, say something. Guns. I mean, this is going to be my little pet peeve, because I grew up my dad was an military officer. We had real guns, and like, he was very serious about them. I can no longer imagine a situation in which you need to have a gun that is capable of firing bullets on your set in any way. If you pull a trigger on a gun on your set, it should do nothing. And that is just one of my pet things. But like, I always make sure, I always talk to the props guy. If there's going to be a gun on set, I'm like, is that a real gun? Is the firing pin removed? Is it capable of firing? Is there any ammunition or blanks in it? Because I want the answer to all those questions to be, it can't fire. There's not even a blank. I don't even like to have blanks, to be honest. I mean, you need them sometimes. Some people love them. Some showrunner wants to have them because they make really cool sounds and smoke and flashes and stuff. But make sure that no one is going to get hurt making the thing that you wrote. That's a big thing. Jesse, you want to talk a little bit about that too? Sarah? I mean,
as you know, Erica has a segment, our showrunner has a segment in her tone meeting every single time, which is safety and respect first. Bottom line. Covers all bases, really. If someone feels unsafe or in a situation of disrespect, you're doing it wrong, very wrong. That's all you need to know, really.
And increasingly,
the worst state. Sorry, go ahead. Go, Sarah.
Increasingly, for scenes where there's intimacy, there are rules around who's allowed to talk to the actors. And so, you know, what kind of notes you're allowed to give, whether you're a director or a writer or anybody else. The best bet is to go through the intimacy coordinator. So the way it'll work is, if there's a scene with any intimacy, and I mean, I just had an episode where 2 fully clothed actors put their arms around each other and kissed. And one of the actors said, I'd like an intimacy coordinator. No problem. So the intimacy coordinator talks to the actors privately, gets a sense of what they're comfortable with, then reports back to the director. This is what they're willing to do. This is what they're not willing to do. In our case, we had an actor who, despite it being scripted that they were kissing, was not comfortable with kissing. Okay, no problem. So I went to the writer. I said, what's our workaround? And we came up with other ways of expressing what the scene needed. As we're shooting that scene, I'm in coordination with the intimacy coordinator, but like, even just like as a protect your career thing, you don't want to be talking to actors in an intimate scene, because that's very regulated and very very sensitive. Like the business went from anything goes to nothing goes, kind of for all the right reasons. But you know, you need to really understand what the parameters are of your ability to note scenes like that before you get to set.
Really important. And look, it has to be, the actor's comfort level has to be there. And you could be like, well, what, like, you have to kiss, this is your love interest. Look, I know an actor, I've never worked with him. I've heard he's a terrific actor. I'm not going to name him. He will not kiss anyone, period, except his wife. It's a thing. It's just his personal credo. It's a sort of a point of like, his relationship with his wife is such that he does not feel comfortable kissing anyone that is not her. And you have to respect that. And so it's really important, like Sarah was saying, to work through the director, work through the intimacy coordinator, make sure that everyone is good with the scene. And sometimes that just means that someone says, hey, do you want an intimacy coordinator for this? That should always be the case if there's any kind of kissing, hugging even. It just always has to make sure that your actors are comfortable with it. And if they need an intimacy coordinator, you get them one. And that is everything except some practicality. So I'm just going to throw out a lot of things really, really fast. And I apologize to our ASL interpreters. But comfortable shoes that do not make noise for wearing on set at all times. Make sure you have all the gear you need for the weather that you're going to encounter when you get up to set. If you don't have something on the day, talk to the costumer on the set, because I got freaking frostbite from walking on an ice rink because I was stupid and I wore the wrong shoes, and I didn't go to the costumer and say, hey, you know those little heat gel things that you can put in your shoes? I really need those. Make sure you have a valid passport, and that your passport is valid for 6 months after the end of production. Because for a lot of countries, if you're traveling, you need a 6-month valid passport to get into the country, and that is from the date of arrival. And so if you show up and your passport, then you're kind of screwed. I strongly recommend that you do not bring your wife, husband, significant other, children, dog, anyone like that to set, especially the first couple times you go, because that is, you just need to be focused, and you need to understand the rhythm of the show before that. My wife will sometimes come up with me, usually only for prep, because once production starts, like I'm home for 6 hours. If I'm lucky, I'm gonna get 6 hours of sleep. I'm working 18-hour days, and it's just not fun for anybody. But anyway, that's something that I would say. And any other good hints for practicalities?
I'd say sound stages are always colder than you think they're going to be. Like, wear your warmest pants and layers and everything. It will be cold. And my other little practical thing is tiny flashlight. Have a tiny flashlight, because you're going to be looking at your sides, and it's going to be dark. And you don't want to be that person asking someone to rig a giant lamp. I've been that person. Bring a tiny flashlight.
We've talked about sides. Sides are basically, they're going to give you the call sheet, little tiny versions of the call sheet, and every single page you're going to shoot that day. And there's often like other things on there, like safety stuff or crew stuff, crew lists and stuff like that. I recommend you ask for what they call biggies, which is the large sides. The sides that are the size of an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. You're going to have to write notes all over these things. You do not want to have the little teeny tiny sides. I wish I were techie enough to adapt to having the sides on my iPad and being able to make notes on them that way. I think that that's probably a really good thing if you can figure out how to do it. I haven't done it. I'm going to make Tally explain to me someday how to do it all. But basically, like, if you're not doing that, biggie sides, that's a really good thing to have. Do not eat like the crew. You are not carrying anything. You do not need all those snacks. You do not want to come home feeling disgusting because you ate like a guy who's carrying sandbags around all day. Eat like a normal person. There's food everywhere. I'm telling you, like, there is always going to be food. You do not need to eat all of it. It's going to be delicious. don't need to eat it. Anything else? Don't, if at all possible, if they offer you a car, you could drive in prep, but try not to drive during shoot. And this is like you're going to be in a strange city. The weather may be sucky, and you're going to be driving home at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're going to be exhausted. It's much better to have a professional driving for you in that situation. A lot of shows these days, they will give you they will make sure you have a driver, or if the director is accommodating, the director is required to have a driver. A lot of times they'll throw you in the same car as the director. If the director's cool with that, that's not a bad way to go. It also lets you talk at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. It means you're there when they're there. So I always take them up on that. If that's the director's cool with it, then I'm all for
I
that.
always
Any
say
other
if
like
the director's cool with it, put me in their van, and I can think of at least 2 or 3 situations, and I always say pick me up first. They need to sleep. But I literally can think of three times now where I pulled up to the director's hotel and like had to wake them up. So it is also a good way to get your director to set on time, because they that's happened to me, you know. It's a tough job.
it happens. Not with
It
Sarah,
happens.
not with Jesse, but it happens. Is there anything we missed, guys, or should we do some Q&A? I think we're supposed to, we have 3 minutes left. We can probably do like 5 or 10 questions in maybe if you're willing to stay for like until 10 after. So I think we have a list of questions, and Greg is going to throw them to us. Guys, before we do Q&A, anything we missed that we should throw out there? Any last little bits of advice? All right, cool. Greg, if you've got questions, we may have answers. How do you deal with a guest director who doesn't want to work with the writer? I mean, it happens. It doesn't hopefully happen very often, because in TV, most directors are pretty hip to the idea that the writer is the person they need to be working with. You can try to get your showrunner to give them a little bit of a talking to if necessary. Anybody else have any advice on that one?
I would say endear yourself to that director, you know, like you will soon find a way to make that director your friend by making their life easier in some way, shape, or form. If it's making the day easier for them, if it's running interference with like a difficult actor, just find a way to make them your friend, and you can have a frank conversation with them as well. And if the relationship is terrible, then that's part of your observe and report, and you're talking to your director afterward, or you're talking to your showrunner afterwards about the experience with that director, and that director may not work on the show next year. So that's.
I'd be curious to hear what you think, Jesse, in terms of being like a you know, kind of like a diplomat between a writer and director, because I really feel like that's when you can shine, right?
I've definitely had a few of those situations come into my office on various shows. And really, you need to divide it up immediately into, is this an HR thing you're talking about, or is this a working style thing you're talking about? And if it falls into a working style type of situation, you know, the truth of the matter is we don't all get along. That is the facts across the board. It might not be the director. It might be an actor you don't get along with. So there's a certain amount of reality you just got to learn how to adapt to. And I think that's kind of what you were saying before, you know. But if it goes beyond that, if it becomes something that pure and simple, someone's afraid to speak up now, if it falls into any sort of category where they really honestly feel like I can't do my job, then I've stepped in and I've had a diplomatic conversation with that director about, hey, look, you know, this is a collaborative process. We brought you in here to do a good job, but part of a good job is not just doing your little bit inside your head. It's about allowing others in. And obviously that would be said in a diplomatic way, but there are occasions where you need to do that. And you know what? Sometimes the good news is that person isn't aware of how they're signaling. And once they're told that, they very much like, okay, I'm sorry, you know, I'm too close to this, and they adjust really well. Sometimes that person, it's baked into the cake. And like you said, they might not be back the next season.
You know, that's a big part of why it's really nice if you're there for prep. Hopefully you've had a bunch of conversations with the director. Maybe you've gone out to dinner together. You've gone to see a hockey game together, whatever. and hopefully you can build, you know, part of what you need to do is build a relationship with that director. And some directors, it's great. It's easy, you know. Everyone immediately was singing Sarah's praises when she showed up on our show. We've had a couple directors where that was a little more of an effort, and make that effort then. I had a director, a lovely, awesome director, but there was some issues initially with their communication style. And I made an extra effort to try to create a dialogue with that director. And it all worked out. It worked out. Once they got through their process, they were terrific. And it turned out to be a very good episode. But there are obviously challenges. I wanted to mention one other thing. Greg is going to put into chat, I think, at some point, links to two different documents. One was written by Erica Mittman, the showrunner on Irrational. One was written by Adele Lim, who was the showrunner of a show I worked on called Starcross. She also wrote Crazy Rich Asians, and she's an awesome person. And they both have written guides covering sets. They'll cover a lot of the same things we've covered here. They'll have some other information that we didn't cover here. So you should grab those. Next question was, what should a writer do first when they arrive on set? Anyone?
I think, well, hopefully you're going into prep, right? But a lot of times you don't know what you're walking into. So I would say just listen, observe. I've walked into rooms with people fighting and I'm like, I just got off a plane. I have no idea what is happening. But most of the time, somebody has prepared you to be on set. There've also been a situation where I was dropped off at like the wrong part of the sound stage and somebody thought we were breaking into set, so it's like, you just never know. And every culture is going to be different. A crew that works out of New York City is going to be very different than a crew that works in Nova Scotia, I think. So understanding the culture of the set and just sort of going with it and not going in like a bull in a china shop, that's not going to serve you or anybody else well. And also, like, if there's other people who've been to set before you, and especially your showrunner, get as much intel as you can ahead of time so you know what to expect, who to go to, who your tally is, who immediately who to befriend, and learn about the town, where you're staying, what's all of that stuff. Figure out as much ahead of time before you can, but there's always gonna be stuff you can't prepare for. You don't know.
And if the question is, what do you do that day when you arrive on set?
Oh, that day.
If that's the question, it's not really clear, but obviously, like, make sure you understand the plan of the day, look at the sides, review the day if you haven't done so before. Make sure that you and the director are on the same page. If there's any big scenes or big things that you need to work with, it's a good time. Like, usually you can get breakfast, and get there early enough to have some breakfast and then have a little time to talk to the director. Right. That's my advice.
Yeah. Get there early. I would,
Yeah.
if it's a day that you're shooting, if there's a problem and we've got to wait until call to solve it, we're late. But if, like, usually I'm at least a half hour ahead of time, but that same thing, Lily, you were talking about, you walk through a set and you're like, hey guys, there's a fridge in this scene and there's no fridge in this room. Hold on, let's see. Let me talk to Lila and see if we can take the line about the fridge out. Like those kinds of things are super helpful. You can also ask for the timings from your first AD.
Yeah.
They'll have, we've got 5 scenes today. This is going to be an hour and a half. This one's going to be 4 hours. And that'll also maybe kind of help you figure out, like, ooh, okay, this is not the hill to die on because we got to get out of this scene in the next 15 minutes or we're going to be late, versus, oh, you know what? We've got time. I'm going to play one of my chips. Now, those timings are really helpful.
Call sheet is what we would be asking for them.
How Lil suggested, sharing a car with your director if you can. If that's not possible, make sure your call time is the same as the director.
Yeah, I always ask, like, if we have separate cars, what time do you want to arrive on set? Because I guess some people just want to like roll in at like 10 in the morning. And I'm like, when is so-and-so landing? That's when I want to land, and I just hit the ground running. You always have time for a breakfast burrito, but you don't have time to like fix the problems that are about to like creep up on you.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. Aside from remaining on set from beginning to end, what are your top writer on set no-nos? Like, what is bad writer? Don't do that, essentially.
I think going directly to the actor without going through the director first is probably the most obvious one. Although there have been situations on shows where we've been on for multiple seasons and whatnot, they would probably prefer to like, they may approach you because you're the familiar face. In which case I usually try to pull the director in and make it, a conversation between all of us.
Or there have been times where the director's like, hey, can you take this? Because this is going to be a longer conversation than I need to have right now. And you're doing them a solid by discussing it in very granular detail. But you absolutely need to be looping your director in whenever you're communicating with an actor. And I also think once you understand the rhythms of a set, you need to understand when you are inadvertently maybe stopping somebody from doing their job. Because you're the writer on set and because you are the representative of the showrunner or the showrunner, you never want to be engaging somebody while they have something else to do, because they don't want to have to say to you like, hey, I got to go, like, da, da, da. So respect people's space and time and let them do what needs to be done.
And Lila and Nora, to your point, also a good director is looping the writer in on what they're doing too.
Yeah.
It should never feel like, okay, I just saw a little huddle, a little scrum of the actors and the director and whispering, and then they come back and they don't talk to you. And that flow, that rhythm you guys were talking about earlier, it should be a two-way thing. And then it really starts to work. And by the way, actors love that because they see the writer and director as a unified force, a creative force. It helps.
There's nothing better than like when you've given a note, the director has given the note, you watch the take, they come back, they stick their head out from whatever the spaceship that you're shooting in or whatever, and they're going like thumbs up, and you go, yes, we got it. Even just something as simple as that being acknowledged is helpful. And also when the director gives a great piece of direction, a lot of times afterwards, I'll say, I don't know what you told him or I heard on the comms when you said that thing, that was the key. I think it just helps you communicate, positive reinforcement. It's, basic.
I would say also like a no is not appreciating your crew and not taking care of your crew. I think it's really important, especially if you remember you're the representative of the showrunner. So you should be treating people with respect. You should be thanking people when you see them do a good job. Like we had a shoot that was in the forest and everyone's running around and like lugging gear and stuff like that. I make it a point to be able to say like, thank you. You great. I mean, you dragged Video Village all over these woods for 12 hours and the monitors were always working and like they were always there for us. And thank you so much. You really made things a lot easier for us today. Or wow, that was an amazing shot you got. Amazing. I'm amazed that you were able to get on skates and skate backwards with your camera and get all that footage on the ice rink. I mean, good job, Sean. It's stuff like that. I think it's like give your crew love. I mean, they're working their butts off, and I think it's people who take the crew for granted or treat the crew like servants. It's like, don't do that. Like, don't be that person.
Is this where you bring food trucks, Rob?
Oh, food trucks. Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that real quick. Probably you should, and most shows that it is the culture, you will buy a food truck for the crew, usually towards the end of the production. Usually you'll split it with the director. Yes, it's going to cost you a bunch of money. Put it on your corporation if you have one. It's the cost of doing business. And it's your way of showing appreciation for the crew. So you should do that. And that's something you should talk to the director about in prep. And there's usually somebody in the office who can help you coordinate that. And you can never go wrong with coffee, man. Yeah. Like it's coffee and smoothies when in doubt.
Yeah. And if
Tally,
you're
do you have
a
any
staff
no-nos?
writer, if you're like a staff writer or a story editor and you're not making the big bucks, like nobody's going to expect you to roll out the like in and out truck. Like it's everybody understands just any effort that you've made, that it's appreciated, but yeah, you don't have to act like you're the number one on the call sheet. Just any appreciation they appreciate.
Tally, any no-nos?
I think it was all pretty covered. I think just to expand on the note about stopping or interrupting people from doing their jobs, that's something to also just like be aware of when people stop talking to you and get a faraway look, they're not being rude. They have somebody talking in their ear, and the number of times you might be in a conversation with somebody and they're just going to walk away from you. It's not personal. It's they're listening to something that has to happen right now and they're going to run away. And maybe if you're lucky, they might circle back around and say, sorry, yes, let's continue this. But chances are they're not going to.
Let's see. Why is it called single camera when there's more than one cameras? This goes back to sort of the old days when there was only usually one camera, but basically dramas are shot usually with one or two cameras, and they're catching usually the same thing at the same time, and that's called single camera. Although you can have up to three. I've had as many as four. Whereas in the old days, and still to this day, some shows that are like sketch shows or sitcoms shot in front of a studio audience, they always have multiple cameras going all the time. They used to be on these giant pillars that look like Daleks, if people know Doctor Who, and they would roll them around. And that was called three camera, and then it became called multi-camera. So they always had three cameras, but now they have more sometimes. We usually used to only have one camera at a time when film was expensive and cameras were expensive. Now we often have two at a time. Yeah. That's about it. All I have to say about that. For more junior writers heading to set, please share your thoughts on fake it till you make it vibe versus explain it to me like I'm a 3-year-old type style, or somewhere in between. In other words, like that, I mean, that kind of depends on the show. I think what you're asking is
I'm always the ask the question. I mean, I think people also like to explain their jobs to you because what they're very into, they're really into designing props. They want to talk to you about it. And like, so I would say, ask the question. There are no questions. You know what I mean? Like, don't fake it till you make it, because then you won't be able to fix it in prep. Like Sarah said, like you gotta know where the pitfalls are. I would just say, ask the question. That you can find an ally if it's an AD or just somebody, and you can whisper them and be like, what does that guy do? Okay, when they said this, like I heard it, sometimes there's terms that you won't understand if you didn't go to film school or if you didn't work in production before. Just ask somebody. I think
and this is like where Tally is your best friend.
Yes,
right?
That's true.
Your script supervisor is your best friend, your confidant, your therapist. They know where all of the bodies are buried. They know the flow. They know who's chill, who's prickly, like where's the best, stage, where to get the good coffee.
Where's the good bathroom? Where's the hidden bathroom?
And so just if you are sitting next to your script supervisor, like that is the greatest resource. They're going to know like, hey, I think I'm going to give that note. And they'll be like, just wait, but I will say, like, there is a certain fake it till you make it when you get on every new set for every new show, because it doesn't matter how long that you have done it. Every show is different. Every culture is different. There are pitfalls, and I can't think of a time that I've ever been on set where I didn't learn something completely new or unexpected, and stuff is always coming out of you from left field. So you just need to be communicative, patient, honest, open. There are things that I'm learning all the time. And still to this day, I'm like, wait, what is that word? I've never heard that before, and I've been doing this for 15 years. So,
what's in New York? I've never heard that before. Oh, it's a large apple box. It's a big apple.
Yeah, who knew?
Who knew?
Totally normal. You don't need to be self-conscious.
I would err on the side of asking questions and admitting that you need to know things rather than just trying to pretend you know everything. I feel like that's usually not a good way to go. I think, look, we're 15 minutes over. I know we have more questions. I hate to say it, but I think we should probably conclude. Anybody have any last words of wisdom before we disappear?
I would say don't be afraid to like pick the brains of the people, you know, who do go to set and have experienced, you know, this. If there's, like Lila said, like every time you go, there's going to be something new. Be open to that experience. If you've never worked on a show with music or dance or something, and all of a sudden you are, if you never worked on a show where you have to account for, you know, makeup or weird effects, and how put that in the time, talk to somebody who's done it before. They will help you, and you know, just use everybody around you as a resource. And the fact that you guys are here tonight is really wonderful, and that means you care, and that means you will be able to figure it out somehow, even if it seems daunting.
And it's okay to be wrong.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think like everybody's been new, everybody makes mistakes. I feel like sets can be really forgiving places. I've never seen anything galvanize people's affection like taking responsibility and going, oh, my bad. I got that one wrong. That one's on me. Sorry, guys. Everyone will go, oh, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's okay to be wrong. I think sometimes people get into trouble when you're new and something maybe goes sideways, and there's a like, no, that's not what I meant, or you know what I mean? Like, it's okay. We're all gonna fuck up. It's good. It's a team sport, you know, like Robert was saying. And as long as we take care of each other and take responsibility, we'll figure it out.
And
I would also
finding,
say, oh, go ahead, please.
well, just finding your voice as well, in as much as like what Sarah was saying, we've all been new and been that, you know, new person on set. And I remember early on in my career, the number of times where I would be so worried about speaking up about something because I didn't want to be wrong, or I didn't want to look like I didn't know what I was doing. And invariably somebody would speak up and say something like I was going to say, or say the exact same thing. And it's always, oh, good point, or oh, that, yeah, or no, but that's okay, like thanks for asking. And so as long as you're finding the right time to speak up, always do, because the worst thing that's going to happen is somebody might say no. And you know, just being comfortable with speaking out like that.
Like I've never regretted giving a note, really. Even if it didn't help, like I've never regretted giving a note, but I always regret not giving the note, because you'll be watching the episode like months later on TV and being like, yeah, that joke did not land. Like that was, there's that thing still bothers me in the background, the clock. I can't believe we let a clock into that, whatever it is. That's how I've always felt. So, you know, better to err on the side of like trying to make it better, I think.
My one last piece of advice would be, actors are under tremendous pressure. They are under more pressure than you can imagine a lot of the time. It's hard sometimes for us who do not act to understand how much can be on their shoulders. And so if there's an issue, like I always say, like give them the benefit of the doubt as much as possible, like, because they have to bring this character to life. And I know one of the biggest anxieties for writers always on set is how to help get the actors to, like, you know, do the things that the showrunner has approved and the network has approved and all that other stuff, but also understand that like they're working really long hours. They have to memorize a lot of lines. They are physically moving around a lot. They are like, their face, as an actor I worked with once said, like, you don't understand, mate. It's my face on screen. And if I look like he's British, so it's like, if I look like a C word, I'm the one who looks like a C word, you know? So give the actors the benefit of the doubt as much as possible. And yeah, do always remember it is a team sport. And also remember that Norman Lear got fired off of Archie, you know, off of All in the Family by Carol Connor because they didn't get along. And at the end of the day, Norman Lear got the axe. So, you know, try to make things work. Try to make their lives better. Try to be helpful. Try to be a positive force all the time.
And I also would just say, it's very stressful. It's very intense. It can move very quickly, but you should, every once in a while, take a deep breath and take a look around and realize that this is your job. being on set is the most magical experience. It is the stuff that we all dreamed of as kids. We're in the dream factory. We are literally making stuff up for a living, and there are 200 people around you that are hustling to like make that dream a reality. And they're the most talented, incredible artists and craftspeople and technicians and talents that you could be surrounded by. So really try to, every once in a while in the swirl, like take it in and like feel the glow and feel like your 12-year-old self being so proud of yourself that you're sitting on a television set, because it's the best.
Thanks everybody for coming, and again thanks to our wonderful panelists, Sarah Wayne Callies, Jesse Warren, Nora Zuckerman, Taliesin Sanford, Lila Zuckerman. You guys, thank you so much for sharing your wit and wisdom with all these wonderful people who we can't see, but I'm sure had a great time. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for writing, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lots of fun.